Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we are doing our 8th episode of Crime Time with Shay. Now, as usual, you guys, I will be listing all the stuff down below that I'm going to be using. I will be showing you throughout the video what I'm going to use as well. But let's go ahead and jump straight into the video. So today's story is going to be about Joyce Chiang. So her story takes place in Washington, D.C., which we all know has to do with a lot of politics over there, and her brother actually both work in government. Now, I'm not sure what he does, but I know he does work in the government system, and she works for the Immigration and Naturalization Service, which is the INS. So I'm going to be calling it the INS from now on. So on Saturday, January 9th, 1999, her brother Roger was at the apartment that they both shared. Now, on this day, she actually went out with friends, and she actually didn't come home that night, but Roger just thought that she just spent the night over her friend's house and just didn't want to make the walk home. She actually got sick over the New Year's weekend, and so that's why he just thought that she just stayed over the night over his friend's house, because it was still cold outside. I mean, it's DC in January, so he just thought that she just didn't want to make the trip home. Now, she's also 28 years old, and Roger is her little brother, so I mean, he just thinks that, hey, she can handle her own, you know what I mean? By Monday, you guys, she still is like a no-call, no-show. She didn't show up for work. No one has heard from her. So I mean, by this time, I would be freaking out. But what Roger does is he goes by the apartment and he noticed that everything was exactly like the way he left it. Now, you guys, she's a staff attorney at the INS, which is a prestigious job, and she worked really hard to get this position. So, I mean, like, having this job, people would notice that you didn't come to work, you know what I mean? Like, it's a very important job. And so that's when, like, the people at, like, her coworkers also started to freak out. She's not answering her phone calls. She's not answering her emails. But for whatever reason, Roger actually waits until Tuesday to report her missing. Now, in an interview, he said that he was just giving her like one more chance to kind of like reach out or call somebody or even like show up. I know that's weird for some people, but we'll talk about that a little bit later and why he may have waited for like a later opportunity to report her missing. So come Tuesday, January 12th, he's calling everybody that he knows, asking about where's Joyce, but no one has seen her. No one has talked to her. He finally calls the police and the FBI to report her missing. Like I said, it was Tuesday. Now, he is getting the FBI involved because it's protocol. Because since she worked for the government, she's technically a federal officer. So he is following like what he's supposed to do. Because like I said, she's a federal officer, so the FBI needs to get involved when they go missing. So what they start to do is create a timeline. So they know that on Saturday she was actually pretty busy. In the afternoon, she actually was with a friend having coffee, and then later that night she met with her friend, who's also her coworker, for like a dinner and a movie. So I think they said that the dinner was around 8:30, but both of the friends said that she was wearing a green thigh-length jacket that had like a hoodie on it with light blue jeans, a black turtleneck, and this like cute scarf. Vibes, you guys, vibes. Now, her friend, coworker, person that she had dinner with said that she gave Joyce a ride back to DuPont Circle, which, you guys, DuPont Circle is right around where her apartment is. And they did this because Joyce actually wanted to stop by that Starbucks that was like close to her home to get a tea. So it was actually better for her to walk to the Starbucks rather than getting dropped off. It's a big like kind of city, so traffic is kind of hard to drive. I mean, places like New York, LA, things like that, it's better to just walk to the place instead of like taking a car. So that's why they ended up getting dropped off there. She said that she dropped her off at the corner of Connecticut and R Street Northwest, which again is across from the Starbucks. Now, she said that Joyce didn't mention that she had any other plans, so she just assumed that she was just gonna go get her tea and then walk the 3 blocks home. I mean, you guys, this is barely like a quarter mile. She could probably see the Starbucks from her apartment. That's how close she was to home. Now, unfortunately, you guys, there was no cameras at that Starbucks, which is mind-boggling to me because I would think that there would be. Now, the FBI does interview the people that was working that day, but nobody really remembers Joyce. But it's like a fast-paced environment, so I mean, if she wasn't like really standing out, then they wouldn't remember her, is my train of thought. I mean, honestly, like, even if she went in to buy a tea, what if she even changed her mind and ended up buying a latte or something else? You know what I mean? So it's kind of, since there's no cameras, that part really led them to nowhere. Now, the police did find out that Joyce had left her pager at home. And while she was out, she actually did get one page from it. I don't know what it was. I can't find it anywhere. I don't know if it was like a code, or like back in the day we used to like write numbers for codes for like I love you and things like that. I couldn't find that anywhere, but they did end up tracing it back to a payphone that was near the Dulles National Airport, which was actually 40 minutes away from where she lived. And since it was done from a payphone, unfortunately, they don't know who sent that page. So again, there's another thing that just led them to nowhere. Now, they did question an ex-boyfriend of hers, but he was immediately ruled out because he had like basically nothing to do with the disappearance. I mean, he had like an alibi. I don't know how far back he was her ex, but I mean, it didn't seem like he was involved in any way. So again, he was just ruled out. Because of this, of the FBI just basically getting to nowhere, they did offer a $20,000 reward for any information leading to her disappearance, but it was to no avail. Now, her wallet with her INS ID and her expired credit card was found at the Anacostia Park, I hope I said that right, by a female jogger one day after she went missing. So, I mean, you guys, this park literally goes for miles and miles in either direction to the point where it's literally 1,200 acres worth of park. So the jogger ends up giving the wallet to the park police. Now, both of them at the time didn't know that it actually belonged to a missing persons. So the park police didn't take any of the jogger's information for like a callback. Now, you guys, this park is not on the way home to Joyce's house. And even if it was, I mean, number one, it's 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Number two, Joyce is sick, so why would you want to go to the park? Like, for me, in my head, I'm sick, I want to go home. I had a long day with all my friends. Number three, it's crazy cold outside. Like I said, you guys, it's Washington, D.C. in January. It's probably snowing over there. Also, number four, it's not safe. This park is a 20-minute drive, not walk, a drive away from DuPont Circle. So there's no way why she should have been at park at that time. Now, once the police get a hold of the wallet, they noticed that her debit card was missing. And when they checked her like debit card activity, there wasn't any activity since the Starbucks. So what the police end up doing is basically like a Hail Mary. They put out a public call for the jogger who found the wallet, and guess what, you guys? She actually returns their call. So she actually said that she found the wallet near the park, not in the park. So she actually found it on the Anacostia River. So now the police are bringing their dive teams out there. They brought their radar equipment and their cadaver dogs. Now, on January 21st, 1999, this is 12 days after she went missing, near the entrance of the Anacostia Naval Station, her jacket was found, and then fairly close to that, her ID was found. Now, other things were also found like nearby, kind of like as if someone was emptying a wallet before they dumped it. So her Safeway card was found, her house keys, her gloves, and her Blockbuster card was also found. So while all this search was happening on the ground, you guys, like I said, the dive team was out there doing their thing, and they actually did find a body in the river, but it wasn't Joyce's. It was actually of a male body, which, you guys, this actually opens up a whole nother can of worms. Like, I want to know who this is and what happened to him. That's a whole different, like, episode. Anyways, so they did send the body and Joyce's belongings to the examiner for them to analyze, and they proceed with the search around the Anacostia River. But they ended up calling off the search the next day because they didn't find anything else. Now, they wanted to get some TV exposure, so they actually started working with America's Most Wanted at the time. So while they were still doing their research, working with America's Most Wanted, they were waiting for the lab results. So weeks go by and they end up getting the results. So they found fibers or hairs on like Joyce's things, and it was from a African American and a Caucasian. Now, this is obviously not Joyce's because Joyce is Taiwanese American, so it's obviously not hers. And because of this is when they start to actually think that something bad happened to her. Now, they even start to suspect the brother, Roger. Now, the thing is, Roger was actually the voice of the family. He does as much interviews as he can. He puts up flyers, does visuals, and he even works for the police. Anything and everything they want from him, they do. Up to the point where he even actually takes a polygraph test for whatever reason, it came inconclusive, which to me, that's kind of sketchy. But inconclusive doesn't mean that he failed. You know what I mean? But another reason why the FBI just kind of are weary about him is because he waited until Tuesday to report her missing. And I mean, he says that it was inconclusive because he had anxiety and the police were basically trying to set him up. But he was actually never really looked as a suspect, and they just basically left it at that. Now, months go by. So now we're in March 31st, 1999, at around 6:30 p.m. This lady named Leslie Brown in Fairfax, Virginia, is at home hanging out, and she hears like a commotion outside. So she sees a canoeist, and he's like frantically yelling for like help and for like someone to call the police because there was a body up on shore. So that's what she does. She goes back inside, she calls the police, and asks for someone to come help. Now, the body was laying face down. It was wearing blue jeans with a black turtleneck, and by this time it was super decomposed. So obviously, by the description of the clothes that the body was wearing, we kind of have a pretty good idea that this is definitely Joyce Chiang. But they do have to verify it by the health records. But they also look inside of the victim's socks, and they found Joyce's debit card. But again, they want to go ahead and verify that this is her by her health record. So they take some DNA samples from her brother Roger, and they go through her dental records to verify that it is Joyce. Now, her body was found 8 miles away from all of where her stuff was found. And to me, I'm just thinking like, okay, why is her stuff there? And how did her body get over there? So months later, like I said, they did verify that it was Joyce by the blood sample and her dental records. Now, the results of the autopsy, you guys, was inconclusive. I didn't even know that you could have an inconclusive autopsy. I felt like the autopsy kind of gives you most of the answers of like how the victim passed away, how long they passed away. There were blunt force trauma or a gunshot wound or a stab wound, but Joyce didn't have any of those. So she didn't have any like ligature marks or anything like that. So the only thing I can think of, she was suffocated, which would be like a really brutal, sad death. But like I said, there was no gunshot wound, no ligature marks, no stab wounds, and she didn't even have water in her lungs, so they know that like she wasn't drowned. You know what I mean? By this time, you guys, we're in the month of July, and the police have barely anything to go by. Now, later, a Starbucks employee comes forward and said that she did remember Joyce, and she was actually talking to a blonde woman for like an hour or so. Now, to me, I'm like, why didn't you come forward sooner? You knew that Joyce was, missing and now pronounced dead. And like, why did you wait so long to come forward? But whatever the case, they did make a sketch deposit of this woman, but the police never released it to the public. Why they do this, why they make this sketch and just don't release it to the public, I will never know. But again, this is just another dead end that they have to deal with. In February 2000, they did finally say that she was a victim of foul play. But a year after this, down in May 1st, another person goes missing and is also found dead around the same area. Her name was Chandra Levy. Side note, you guys, her case is also another one that has a lot of plots and turns and twists and things like that. So if you guys want me to go ahead and cover her case as well, let me know down in the comments, because that's another good case to go by. Now, you guys, a heads up, Chandra's case did get a lot more coverage than Joyce's did. And because of this, Joyce's case did get more traction. But again, she got way more attention than Joyce's did. I mean, to the point where she even got a documentary, you guys. But this also made the police actually pay attention and kind of look at the similarities of the two cases. They both were from California. They both worked in government jobs. They both lived near DuPont Circle, and they both had brown hair with brown eyes, was about around 5'3" and 100 pounds. There's a lot of similarities between these two. Like I said, Chandra's case got way more coverage than Joyce's, where Joyce barely even got like an article kind of thing. So I'm super grateful that her brother was the voice of her in her case. The police actually don't think that there's a connection between the two cases, but remember when I said that they were working with America's Most Wanted? John Walsh comes in. He definitely thinks that both of these cases had to be done by a serial killer. What they don't talk about, though, is a third girl. So she was technically the first girl, if we're going to talk about like serial killers and patterns. In the summer of 1998, a man heard screams and called back to like where the screams were at and didn't get any response. What happened was the next day, they ended up finding a body of 20-year-old Christine. The police said that she was sexually assaulted and she was bludgeoned to death by a rock that was nearby. Now, guess what, you guys? She was also from California. She also had dark hair. She was around that 5'3" mark, about 100 pounds. And you guys, I see where John Walsh is going with this. There is a pattern of like these girls going missing around the same area and then being found dead. And what's even sad, you guys, for Christine's case, she got even less coverage than what Joyce got, which is mind-boggling to me. I mean, everybody should get the same amount of coverage when they're trying to find this killer that's on the loose. The way he thought is just she was going out with friends just to like release some stress. She didn't come home because, you know, of her cold, and she just wanted to be alone and kind of just like try to figure things out and just needed time to herself. So this is why I'm thinking that he ended up waiting till Tuesday to report her missing. Another reason why they think it's suicide is because where her jacket was found was by this bridge where I guess a lot of suicide attempts happen. And so that's why they thought it could have been a suicide. I can't believe this, you guys. I don't believe this. You know why? Because there was no damage to her body. There was no harm to her at all, where like there was bruising and stuff. And again, there was no water in her lungs. So how can she just like fall off this bridge, have nothing damaged to her body, no water in her lungs, but yet it's a suicide? See, I can't believe this. This is why I don't believe it. Now, why they think this is because they can't prove homicide. And that's because of that inconclusive autopsy. But honestly, if suicide doesn't make sense, it just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Am I going crazy? I'm making myself go crazy. Okay, so obviously her friends, her family also don't believe it's suicide. Roger definitely believes that she was murdered. So I'm on Roger's side. I definitely think she was also murdered. Roger said that he did find some graffiti behind that Starbucks that Joyce went to after she died and found like a really creepy message. So the message said, quote, "Good day, JC. May I never miss the thrill of being near you." End quote. That's creepy, you guys. And obviously, like, JC would definitely go to, like, Joyce Chiang. I mean, it could have been anybody. JC could be anybody. But that is really creepy to find after your sister's death. So Roger and the Chiang family ended up filing a complaint against the law enforcement that was involved because they just felt like that they weren't handling the case in the best way possible. And I definitely agree, because they kept flip-flopping from suicide to homicide, like, back and forth so many times. It just don't make no sense, you know what I mean? Like I said, John Walsh did get involved, and he did say he was a serial killer. And I'm kind of with him, too, on that bandwagon. Also, side note, you guys, Roger now works for America's Most Wanted as a producer, which is another cool plot twist. But yeah, he still works there and is doing well and is helping solve murders and solve cases. So that's awesome. So 10 years goes by and nothing new happened until January 25th, 2011. So the police say that they have new evidence and do believe that Joyce was abducted by 3 suspects at DuPont Circle, and that she was taken to Anacostia River to be robbed. So they think now that she was actually pushed into the river, or that she could have slipped while she was trying to get away. Now, the 3 suspects, one of them is named Stephen Allen, which at the time, which I think right now, even currently, he's serving a life sentence. And then there's another one named Neil Joaquin. Now, he's from Guyana, and he is in Guyana, so he can't be extradited to the States to, be put on trial. They never released the third suspect's name, but they don't have enough to prosecute, or enough evidence to prosecute for either of them. But how they figured out was, so 3 months after Joyce ended up disappearing, Steve and Neil had abducted a woman and taken her to the river to rob her, but they ended up letting her go. I don't know why they couldn't make this connection at the time, and then ended up making the connection like 10 years past. But obviously, there's a pattern there. Now, on May 13th, 2011, this is 12 years after Joyce was found dead, they finally actually said that it was a homicide. But they also ended up closing her case. And they're not willing to charge Neil and Steve. at least. Like I said, they think that they don't have enough for for them to be on trial. They have enough for arrest warrants, but not enough for them to go through trial. And to me, in my head, I'm like thinking like, if you're going to end up closing the case anyway, why not go through the trial? I mean, people have been convicted on less. So I feel like, why not try if you going to end up closing the case? Now, I understand like putting the family through the whole trial thing and not winning the case. I understand. I get it. But if you're going to end up closing the case, that just means to me is you're not trying, and you're not going to be trying to do anything about it. I mean, Joyce is never going to get that justice. So you guys, this is kind of sad to say, but this is where her story ends. Technically, not really, in my opinion. If you keep telling their stories, you keep saying their name, and you keep them relevant, you're keeping them alive. You know what I mean? Her brother actually wrote a book called My Peace I Offer You, and this is basically the experience that he went through trying to solve his sister's case. I'm really frustrated with this ending of this case and how she just didn't get the justice she deserved. But like I said, you guys, let's keep them relevant. Don't stop saying their name and keep telling their story. All right, you guys, until next time, I will see you later. Bye.